Yo, we are live.
Yo,
Today I have James Hansen on here, head of business development, sales, outreach at Cortex. I had the privilege to meet James back in December for the first time in Scottsdale. We had a great dinner, pretty expensive dinner, great dubstep concert. So it's super cool to be here on the podcast, man. Thanks for coming.
cool. Thanks for having me, brother. Good seeing you again
Hell yeah.
here. Uh,
Hell yeah. So when I was doing the research for this podcast, I was looking through your most popular tweets. And
mhm.
there's a couple that really stood out to me, but one stood out to me above the rest. So I want to read it so everybody can hear it. It
Sure.
says, average thoughts lead to average problems. I don't want average problems. I want giant fucking problems. I want to pay more taxes in a month than the average American pays in a decade. I want haters. I want people confused about the things I'm doing. I want to be completely unrelatable to people consumed with collectivist culture. I want the strength to make hard decisions to cut when somebody doesn't want to go deep. So I could really sense like the authenticity and passion behind that tweet. I'm curious, like, where did it come from?
So, yeah, that's actually probably one of my most popular tweets. As far as like impact that people have messaged me about. Honestly, I wrote that while I was walking my dog. So, it was something where I want to say that something in my life had happened the night before. I don't remember, something minor, but it was literally just maybe the opinion of somebody else that I couldn't relate to. Right. So somebody was trying to convince me that, you know, of an argument based on, well, the average person, right? Or some nonsense like that. And to me, it was just something that I couldn't relate to. Again, I have no idea what it was. It was a while back, but I remember waking up the next morning and being like kind of full of piss and vinegar and just being like a little upset about it. Like how dare somebody bring to me average problems? How dare they bring to me the problems of an individual that I cannot relate to in life at this point in my life, right? And it's not to say I can't relate with somebody that is, at a lower spot or lower level of thinking or anything like that. It's just that it's so far removed from my reality that I'm not even going to look at it. I'm not even going to
Mm,
address it, right? It's not a problem to me. And so, um, what I find with a lot of people is they look for problems in their life or they look for ways to create problems. And to me, that there aren't really any problems, right? There's hurdles, there's things that we have to step over, there's um, short term things that need solutions, but very rarely in life are there any any overarching problems that we need to identify with um, you know, in our lives, right? Because once we start identifying with problems, that's where we are stuck. And that's the mindset that we are in, the mental modalities that we're in. And to me, I don't care if the average person can't afford groceries because I refuse to not be able to afford my groceries. I'm going to afford them no matter what. Um, so that was really where that came from. Just somebody
mm,
trying to convince me that I have to think like the average person.
mm. And did you always have this mindset that whatever you wanted to do in life, you didn't want to be average? Or was that something that evolved over time when you realized, like, okay, this is what 99% of people are living like? I don't want this.
Yeah. So what's funny is I actually graduated college. I got a master's degree, public relations in my mid 20s. And I spent, I'm 40 years old, so I'm quite a bit older than you, right, Jack? So I spent a number of years bartending, actually, out here in Scottsdale, Arizona, kind of living this life where, I was making good money, just kind of working out, bartending. And the problem that I had is I saw everything that I didn't want in life, right? I saw the office culture, right? I took some $60,000 a year job, hated it, made me miserable. My parents said I should be happy because I had dental insurance. Um, and what I did is I started rejecting the things that I didn't want. My biggest mistake in life, and this is where I have so much respect for you young dudes like Dan Co, right? Some others, is that rather than just running away from the things that you don't want in life, you're actively able to pursue things that you do want, right? To make those decisions. So for me, it was for a long time just like really kind of avoiding everything that I didn't want, but not moving towards something that I did want. And it wasn't
Mm,
until I actively started chasing something that my thoughts started deepening and the way that I would think about things and kind of like what I would notice and my awareness um, deepened. And then that opened up new opportunities, new avenues for me.
was it a lack of awareness of another opportunity that led to the avoidance of like moving towards like a worthy pursuit? Or was it, okay, there's actually another route. I know the route, but I just don't want to step forward into the unknown and pursue that?
I think it's 50-50. I think it's a little bit of a a generational thing, right? It's like the opportunities that were there to be given, right?
Mhm.
I was always raised to be an entrepreneur, right? Lemonade stand, right? Selling the Boy Scout candy bars, right? Hustling this, mixed state CDs in high school. You probably never even burned a CD in your life, right?
Nah.
But yeah, so I was the guy that was like making mixes and like making like $50 a day in high school, just like selling this stuff, right? So I always kind of had a mindset towards like hustling and like, being creative and like making money. But again, man, I graduated college before YouTube was a thing, right? A lot of the self-help, a lot of the lines of thinking, a lot of the um, things that people pursue, like this new age awakening, this healing stuff that everyone is on, the entrepreneurial journey, right? Finding your purpose. All of that is kind of new, right? It was
Mhm.
hard to find that stuff even 15 years ago. People didn't think like that, right? That content was not out there to be absorbed. You had to go to a library. You had to travel across town to find some ancient texts on Eastern philosophy, right? And you couldn't even check it out from the library. You had to sit there and read it or, copy the pages or something. Um, so it's a little bit of both, man. It just was so much harder. It's as a college, I had a clothing company, two clothing companies actually, t-shirt, silk screen printing, that sort of thing. Um, but that's about what it felt like back then, being an entrepreneur. You can make physical products, you can sell them in person, you can take them to a boutique. Nowadays, you
Mhm.
can create an Instagram page, you can buy some ads, and you can have your business up and running and selling from a storefront in less than a week. Just wasn't possible back then.
Yeah. That's why I'm super grateful that like as I'm entering my 20s, this side of the internet and this amount of content is available because now I have access to like listen to Hormozy, Chris Williamson, Dan Coe, Jordan Peterson, Naval, all at my
Yes.
fingertips, which is like incredible that we have this opportunity, but still most people are, I feel, are not taking advantage of it. And I think like a lot of people want something more in life. I started to want something more like midway through college, but I didn't know what. And so I was like, okay, I'm just going to create like an Instagram theme page for the NBA. And that was my idea of like becoming successful at the time because I lacked awareness of like what steps you could actually take towards building a business or entrepreneurship or anything like
Right.
that. And then you kind of stumble down the rabbit hole and you find like Dan Coe, you find Hormozy, you
Yes.
find Naval, and then it's like once you see it, you can't unsee it. And then that gave me something really powerful to run towards because I was the same like you. Like I've always been very observant or perceptive of the people around me and like the outcomes of those decisions in their life. So like working a normal job, like eating this type of diet, like what does it lead to? And it always scared the shit out of me to go that path. And luckily, after some stumbling around, like you can find this new path, which is the creator economy in my eyes. So I'm curious for you now, like how long have you been, would you say, in this creator economy or like digital entrepreneurship realm? And where do you see it going in the foreseeable future?
Yeah. So what's funny, man, is this is so 2024. So I think Facebook groups came out in 2013. You were allowed to do Facebook groups for the first time. I actually had a fitness Facebook group that had over 2,000 people in it at one point. And it's funny because I look back at this now, right? I used to be in amazing shape. Fitness was my life. I look back at this now and I've got friends that run a business called Clients Community where they do over $10 million a year from their Facebook group. So, at one point I started the page, I had the domain, right? I created the content, right? I, was starting like the storefront. Um, and what happened was that transitioned into just doing Facebook ads in like the next 2 years, which turned into me working for a lawyer, very popular lawyer out here in Arizona, where we would do case acquisition. So I used to be the dude who would go out, put out ads for like mesothelioma. Have you or a loved one been injured by, this dangerous drug, this medical device, that sort of thing? And so what happened was, Facebook groups came and then Facebook ads came, and I saw an opportunity there that kind of just developed into the standard, at the time, 2014, 2015 social media agency model that ended up leading me down a path to actually working for an employer, right? So like I created this business, then worked for an employer, did it specifically. Um, did a couple $100,000 a year at the time. Again, this was 2015, 2016. And then eventually that kind of just burned out and I went back to the safe path that I always rejected. So to kind of answer your question, I was on this path for a long time, kind of going back to the first question. It was like, first, there was no path. Then the path became evident, right, in the years after college. And then I took a step back and I went back to the thing that I was always avoiding to begin with. So for about 5-6 years, I was in the corporate world. Last year, I actually joined Twitter. I actually met, Dan in real life, right? That actually spurred me to join Twitter to kind of go down this path. The realization that, hey, you're never going to be ready to chase the dream. It's like we're either just going to do it, or in a year, I'm going to go back to doing whatever lame corporate job that I had before that was killing me. So
Mm,
a year,
mm.
less than a year,
Damn.
8 months, 8 months. So
That's the wildest thing about this entire online game is how quickly it can evolve, because
yeah,
I only became aware of this stuff probably 15 or 16 months ago. And now, like, maybe I'm biased, but I'm 100% convinced that, like, this is the future of work, and the amount of progress I've made in the 16
yeah.
months, it's incredible.
Bro, it's
And
impressive, dude, what you've done. It really is.
thank you. I appreciate it. I feel like I haven't really done much yet, but it's always like comparison. Because
Yeah.
if I compare myself now to where I was at in college, like when I didn't know about this stuff, completely different. But if I compare myself now to where I want to go, of course I'm gonna fall short. But that's the entire point.
Dude,
Um,
that's the entire game. That's life, right?
exactly,
And that's a
exactly.
never ending game, right? So
Yeah. And the cool thing to me about this game is because you're building a personal brand behind your own name, it's going to live with you for life. And so I see it as like we might have these personal brands for the next 30, 40, 50 years. And the quicker you can start and the more of a long term perspective you can have in the game, I think the better. And so, one thing that I could say is like my quote unquote purpose, or like a mission I really want to help people with, is like these young kids in their 20s, like whether they're in college or they're just starting a job, and they realize that that path is not going to help them realize their potential or live a fulfilling life, is like finding this alternative journey by building something behind their own name in the creator economy. But something I see so often, and I was in the same boat myself, is like when you're in your early 20s, you're in college, you just get a job, like you are unconsciously walking into this like quote unquote trap of the golden handcuffs, where you end up living this life that you didn't even want in the first place. So like for people that are in their early 20s, like how can they, in your eyes now, as like with more life experience than me, how
mm.
can they avoid like accidentally building themselves into a life that they hate? Because that's like my biggest fear.
Yeah, that's yeah, I mean, I think you're in a good path, man. And I think like, the biggest thing for you, Jack, is just like not having anyone else rope you into convincing you to do something that you don't want to do. Right. So, for a guy like you, it's just like having those outliers, right? And that can be anything, man. That can be, the salary, right, of some person that comes in. It's like, hey, Jack, I'll give you 250K a year to come work for me or something. And then you put all your dreams to bed or something. Or it's, the girl, right? Love you women, love you girls, but it's the girl that's going to start taking your time, right? And start distracting you from your mission, right? Because she might not understand the level of involvement and the level of work that it takes you to be even where you are right now, right? So I think those are the biggest things. I think the biggest problem for college kids is the story that they've been told, right? And so this is the same story that I was told as a millennial. I have a younger brother who's 29. He was told the exact same story and he grew up believing it. It was like, get good grades, work hard, go to college, get good grades, work hard, get a job, work real hard, get promoted, right? The typical thing. But what I think most people think is that everything is just going to be on autopilot. Hey, the day that I graduate college, I'm going to go get a job making 80K a year because that's my industry average out of college. Well, okay, you and 500 other people that are applying for that job, right? 6 months
Mm-hmm.
later, you don't have a job. You're working at the Applebee's. You're back home living with mom, and you're wondering what the hell happened. And eventually, you go take a job that's 50 grand a year, right? Just to kind of go down that default path. So I think the biggest thing for young people is that they just believe that everything is going to work out. They think that if they just keep going down the path, eventually they're going to make more money. Eventually they're going to be happier. Eventually they're going to have less problems in their relationships, right? Whatever it might be. And for most people, the day they realize that that wasn't true is a brutal, brutal day for them. So that's the biggest thing that I can, biggest piece of advice is like, hey man, the path that you think is going to work out automatically will not work out automatically without a lot of work. So you might as well work towards doing the thing that you really want to do.
Yeah. No, that's super powerful. And I'm seeing it play out in real time. So, for some added context, if I were still in school, I'd be a senior right now. So, like going to
Okay.
applying for jobs and all that stuff. And I was at Northwestern, like, which is a whatever top 10 university. Now, I
Yeah.
went there for football. So, like, I'm not some genius
Yeah.
like these kids there. But what I've heard from like talking to friends that are seniors is right now, it's the hardest job market for seniors in college to get a job out of college in like the last 20, 25 years. Like kids from Northwestern with economics and finance degrees can't find jobs. And like I find that absolutely mind-blowing because like
Yeah.
that's supposed to be your guarantee. That's supposed to be your ticket. You like you go there for the security and for the prestige and you can't even find a job. And I'm even seeing it with like a lot of my high school friends who go to like good colleges. Like really good colleges are getting like finance degrees and like they can't even find internships. They can't even find jobs. And so it's like to me, the only option to protect yourself against this automation revolution, like the job economy, is building something for yourself. And so
Yeah.
what I'm trying to do with this work is like I think my mission is to open people's minds to all other alternatives, but it
Mhm.
requires a step into the unknown and an act of courage to like put yourself out there, which people are just not willing to do.
Yeah, man. So first off, I'm totally on board with like, hey, there's a new frontier coming, right? With what we're doing at Kortex University, right? What Dan and Joey have created over there. Um, I truly believe that, the micro niche education business is the future, right? I believe that, either solopreneur or small team businesses where we all kind of work together, make money together, eat together is the future. Um, I laugh though when I hear that this is the worst job market for college graduates in 25 years. That might be what the headlines say. I don't really know. I don't read the headlines. I came out of college in 2008. That's when I got my master's degree. You know what happened in 2008? The
Mm-hmm.
entire economy collapsed, right? And I was kind of in the same boat, man. I mean, that's when, the only job that I could find with a master's degree was, $15 an hour, right? Call center type work, right? Doing some nonsense, applying for hundreds of jobs and not getting anywhere. And that's when I kind of was like, okay, well, I can keep doing all this, try and make 40 grand a year with a master's degree, or I can go be a bartender and make 80 grand a year and get off at 10 o'clock and work 30 hours a week and have fun and do all this stuff. My biggest regret, my biggest regret in life at that time was allowing the economy and the macro situation of the world to impact the success that I found as an individual. There were
Hmm.
so many ways for me to succeed in 2008. There were so many ways that I could have looked beyond myself, beyond my network, beyond my friends, beyond my parents, beyond Indeed or Monster, because there was no LinkedIn at the time, right? I could have looked beyond so many things to found sales jobs or industries that were thriving. All it would have taken would have been maybe 20 minutes on Google to find out what industries were currently thriving in a recession because they're there, right? A lot of money is made in a bull market, more money is made in a bear market, for big institutions. There's a reason for it. So I think that was my biggest mistake. And if I was a young guy coming out of college or a young woman coming out of college right now, I would say do not use the excuse of the macroeconomic situation of the world to impact your success, your opportunities, or what you are capable of doing, because you can do so much more and there is always a way. There's always a way.
Yeah. Because you're like basically outsourcing your success to things that are outside of your control. Like you're
Yeah,
fragile. You're
you're
fragile if you're
fragile.
depending on economic situations or a degree or a company to give you this paycheck. And I see like the only way to make yourself irreplaceable and anti-fragile is to become the type of person that can make money in any situation. And you do that by learning like the high value modern skills, which you can learn on the internet for free. Like if you
Oh,
actually are a
yeah,
self-starter. But
right.
the thing is, like Hormozy has that quote, like you can learn 90% of any skill with 20 hours of self-education, but it takes most people 20 years to do those first 20 hours. And so I'm curious for you, because like looking back, you said that was your regret in 2008. Why do you think you didn't take the initiative and go look like for those new opportunities at the time?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, a couple of reasons. So number one being, again, there was no YouTube, right? Facebook
Mm-hmm.
was its in infancy, right? It was still probably for the people, right? Not owned by the government completely. There was no Hormozy, right? There was no Grant Cardone. There was no Gary Vaynerchuk, Dan Coe, right? There were none of these people, right?
Mm-hmm.
We were reading blogs. Our main source of information was blogs, right? So I used to read a blog. It was called like Wall Street Boys or something, right? And it was like a half finance, half kind of like pickup artist, like early stage, like red pill type thing. Um, and it was about stacking cash, right? And this was the best resource that I had at the time towards investments or recommending books to me, right? And it was literally just some dude's blog. It was some dude that worked on Wall Street that was a young guy that started blogging about it. We had a website called goodlookingloser.com. I don't know if you are familiar with Good Looking Loser,
No.
but he was like a classic, right? You go there now and you're like, dude, was this made in the 90s? And it just so, again, it goes down to just opportunities and then awareness. So, if you were to ask me, like removing the internet and all the giants whose shoulders we can stand on now, it was excuses. I made excuses for myself. I allowed other people's excuses. I allowed the news to make excuses for me, right? I allowed, my stepdad who told me that it was a bad economy and, well, guy, you'll get it next time. I don't really have any advice for you because I'm 70 and I'm retired, but, I just pick up your bootstraps and you'll eventually find something that works, right? So
Yeah.
it's just a kind of a
I
combination
hate
of that,
that
man.
line. I hate that
Dude,
line so much.
yeah, and I'm all about being self-sufficient, man. It's like, ask for help, right? Don't expect me to help you. Just, ask for help, right? Um, but at the end of the day, it was the biggest thing is I could have done more and I allowed macro events to affect me in my life, not
Mm-hmm.
realizing that I had way more power than I ever thought.
Mm-hmm.
And I think now those same lessons apply. So like, for example, if I was a 20-year-old, I wouldn't start sending my resume out to recruiters. I would start making friends with people at the company that I wanted to work for. That's what I would do. I would spend more of my time making friends or networking or adding
Yeah.
value to people, right? Um, and again, that line of thinking just wasn't there 15 years ago. There was no opportunity to do that.
Yeah.
You
The thing
know,
I admire though about your journey is even though there wasn't as much information out there or you didn't have the awareness, like you still maintained some level of curiosity where like you tried something and maybe it didn't work or maybe you stopped. Then you went back to the corporate job. Then you were open to a new opportunity with Cortex and Dan when it came. And so like what I see is I feel like oftentimes, like once you hit like 30, maybe, or like a little bit older, people get so set in their ways. And then it's just like, this is just the
yeah,
way things are. Like you just have to do things you don't want to do. But you always
yeah.
stayed curious and looking. And it leads to another tweet you put out, or maybe this was on your 100 best thoughts blog. It was like, most men live lives of quiet desperation. And I
Mm-hmm.
love that quote. So I'm curious, like, what does that mean to you?
Yeah. So I think that quote is I'm probably wrong. I think it might be Henry David Thoreau or something.
Oh, I think it
It's
is. I
not,
think it is. Yeah.
I think it is, right? And, this is something where it's like, people know that they're meant for so much more, right? People go home every single day and they're just like, this is it, right? Or, they realize that they're just not fulfilled in their life, right? Um, and one of the, all right, so I was a football player like you, man. I was a defensive end, right? But I haven't watched an actual season of football in probably close to 15 years, right? Because one of the things that I realized was like I used to live across the street from this dive bar essentially, and I would go in there when I had no money. I'd get like a $10 burger or something, and I would just watch all the men around me, jerseys, big belly, goatee to cover the double chin, backwards hat or something, just yelling at the television, right? And what I realized is just like we're all wasting our time, right? We're all just here on this rock, screwing around, playing, loving, laughing. At the end of the day, dude, we're all just wasting time, right? We're all just spending our time, and we are actively choosing how we want to spend it. And what I just realized was like people choose to spend their time wasting time because they just don't know what else to do, right? They think that life is hopeless, essentially, right? And in the same way that I used to reject all the office jobs and the 40K a year jobs because I found this better way of 80K a year, working 30 hours a week or something. Um, Even then, it felt like anything past that was just hopeless, right? Like it just wasn't working out. Like, okay, I try a business endeavor, it doesn't work out. Okay, well, I'll go back here. Okay, I'll quit this job. Okay, well, I guess I can just go back to the bar if anything happens, right? And so I think most people are desperate to, have some great change in their life, whether it's to lose the belly, make the money, right? Go after the lover that they actually want, whatever it is, and they just don't. Um, and I think it's again because they don't know how, and because they feel like they're still waiting for somebody to come give them permission. It's
Mm-hmm.
like, dude, like your mom or your dad's not going to come give you permission, right? The teacher isn't going to come give you permission to go do that thing, right? So they sit there and they kind of just rage against, anything and everything silently or loudly, politics, Trump, Biden, whatever, BLM, like whatever, current social thing is going on,
Yeah.
because they feel like they have no control or power over their own life or their autonomy or their
Mm-hmm.
sovereignty or any of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's like an outsourcing of your purpose. I was having a conversation with friends about this yesterday or the other day. Like the people who are so ideological about their political party, they're doing it because they lack that personal purpose in their life. And maybe that they think that's their purpose, but they're outsourcing that purpose and that identity to something that ultimately they can't control. And even like
Exactly it.
the diehard sports fans too, like when your entire identity and emotions are tied to like winning or losing a sports game that you have no control over, you're not on the team, you're not a coach, you don't do anything. Like that picture you painted of the bar, that hit deep for me because like a real turning point in my life was so I was a sophomore on the Northwestern football team. I just torn my ACL, so like my third surgery in 3 years. And I was like, fuck, like I don't know where I'm gonna go after this. And I was like smoking weed in my dorm room, and like those high thoughts come and you can't escape them
Yeah.
sometimes. And at the time, because I hadn't moved in like a month, like I was starting to get a little chunky, like I was starting to develop like a little belly, and I was like, holy shit, like if I don't figure this stuff out, I'm gonna end up as the 50-year-old dude who's a washed up high school quarterback at his hometown bar that's like a shell of himself and just like fat and overweight, and it just scared the shit out of me. And now looking back, that was such a crucial moment to then start taking action in the opposite direction because I visualized that future and it scared the shit out of me. And that's why, like, anybody who comes into my coaching program, like, even if I'm teaching them creator economy stuff, the first thing is defining your anti vision. Like, your anti vision
Yeah.
or the future you don't want or the future you want to avoid should be so strong and terrifying that, like, it motivates you to take action in some opposite direction, even if you don't know where it is. And so I
Right.
appreciate you sharing that visual because that brought up that memory.
Yeah. It's just like, yeah, no, thank you for that, man. And it's just like kind of the same thing. It was just like, I remember writing on my Facebook back when we would make Facebook posts. It was like the only monetary goals that I have is to afford the really good HGH and to never eat at Zips again, which is the sports bar that I was at. Right, it's like really popular here in
Yeah.
Arizona. But it's like, and I've gone to Zips. Zips is great, right? The food's good, right? But it's just like whatever I do in my life, I have to remove myself from this being my option, right? Like the default path of like, I'm gonna just walk over to Zips and get a burger and yell at the TV. And that's how I'm gonna spend my Sunday before I go home and pass out at 5 p.m. It's just like, dude, that is not acceptable at all.
Mm, it's scary. And I think that happens when you give up on life or you give up on your
Yeah.
potential. And
Well, just people don't realize it, man. Like they just don't
yeah.
realize that they have a choice to do more than to go do what they've always been doing.
Do you think
It's like
do you think people need to see the potential in themselves, or do they need somebody from the outside to look at them and say, like, you could be more and you just don't realize it?
I so I mean, I think, and this is where like a lot of people might get mad at me on this. I don't think most people have the potential that we think that they have. I mean, it's just the reality. I don't think most people are built for, and I'm not saying not everyone can be a creator. I think everyone can be a creator. Everything can be an online entrepreneur. I think everyone has in them the ability to do that, right? In the same way that
Yeah.
everyone can, you might not, if you're 5'2", you might not, dunk a basketball, right? But you can, go to the gym or get better in some way physically, right? It's like everyone has like the potential to do something. Um, I think that are most people are not going to make an impact on a larger scale. So they need to focus making an impact on the people and the events around them. But
Mm-hmm.
they can't even seem to do that because they're too stuck in their own bullshit. Um, that's just kind of my opinion. I think most of like
Mm-hmm.
money Twitter will end up working a 9 to 5 job. I think
Mm.
that's just how it goes because that's how humans are wired. We're wired to just kind of fall in line. We're wired to, follow the next ant in front of us, right? We're
Yeah.
wired to just go do what the people around us are doing, right? So, um, and I just think for most people, just going the easy way is acceptable to them. And that's what it is at the end of the day. It's like the easy path is easy for a reason. It's fulfilling for most people. Most people are never going to have the awareness to realize that they're not getting what they wanted out of life. Maybe they'll be 50, 60 years old and just kind of like, kind of still blame their mom or, blame their ex husband or wife for, their life being fucked up when the reality is they always had the power and the decision to change that. They just
Yeah.
didn't do it. So,
Yeah. At first, I was gonna push back on that because I was like, I think everybody, and then as you were saying, like different varying degrees of potential, that's when it clicked. So here's my stance. It's like everybody has the potential for more than they currently are. Now, what
yes.
that could be changes, I think, depending on a lot of like maybe things that are out of your control, genetics, environment, whatever it is. But I don't know if you've ever played like sports video games like NBA 2K or Madden or any of those
Mm-hmm.
games. So this is something I've been obsessed with as a kid, and I actually am still kind of like obsessed with it to this day, but in a different context of looking at like human potential is there are certain players in those games, like Michael Jordan, for example, or Tom Brady. Their potential was a 99 and they actualized their potential. Some players
Yeah.
have a 99 potential, but they never reach it. While other players, their ceiling is only like an 80 overall or a 75 overall. And
Yeah.
so I think like your different people's ceilings are different depending on personality traits, genetics, whatever it may be. But everybody has the potential to be more than they currently are. They just need to believe that it's actually possible.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. Like, and it wasn't to say that like, I mean, everybody can improve, right? And everyone can be better
Mm-hmm.
than what they currently are. Um, it's like I don't think I'm going to change the world, right? But I have the ability to, maybe through maybe, right? But through my brand, I also have the ability to impact those that are, closer to me, right? Either through my brand, through my life. Like, if I do self develop, I think it's maybe Terrence McKenna that says this. But the real secret of self improvement is not what it does to you, it's the ripple effect that you have on society for decades after, right?
Yeah.
And I truly believe that. And that's why, like, if you kind of take the basis of like, hey, we're all just walking each other home, right? I think people can make a much larger impact in their lives by focusing first on themselves and then the people around them, right? Giving
Mm-hmm.
themselves the strength to uplift the folks around them. Um, I think of when you talk about like levels, like, there's levels to this shit, right? Tim Grover, right? He was Michael Jordan's personal trainer. He has a book called Relentless. Have you read it?
I'm literally reading it right now. That's so crazy.
Incredible,
Yeah.
dude.
I've been
Incredible,
obsessed
dude.
with this podcast. It's like he's so good.
Yeah, he's so good. I've actually never listened to his podcast, but Relentless and Winning, I listen to at least one of them every single month. every single month I listen to one of them, and I just like alternate them just when I'm walking. That's
Mm,
5 hours, the same book. I literally listened to them on Audible each 6 times last year. Huge fan of them. But what Tim Grover has, he's got, there's three levels of players. There's a closer, right? Somebody who has a great game. There's a cleaner, somebody who can have a great season. Um, no, I'm sorry. There's a closer who has a great game, a cooler who has a great season, and then a cleaner who's somebody who has a great career, right?
mm,
And he kind of postulates that not everyone has it in their DNA to be a cleaner, right? Like not
yeah.
everyone just has that in them, right? And I agree, man. Like not everyone is going to have that in them. I think somebody like Kobe, I think somebody like Michael, right? There's something that's driving them, right? Like a shadow or something, right? A demon, a chip on their shoulder, something like that. Um, Combined with athleticism, God-given talent, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And I think that's just how it is for most people in life. But I think that there's another category where most people are never even going to get to that closer level. And you can
Yeah.
kind of look at it just like on your football team, right? It's like, the people that were second string and were always fine being second string. They just, they came in freshman year and they just accepted that they're going to be second string, right? But then you got somebody like Tom Brady, right? You said that his potential was 99. Him coming out of college, his potential was not 99.
Mm,
And even in his late 30s, people talked about Tom Brady being done. I don't know if you remember this, but 6, 7 years ago, Tom Brady lost a bunch of weight. He came out looking like a skeleton. He started talking about anti-inflammatory diets, alkaline diets, like what he was doing to extend his career, how he had no pains, how he like felt better after, year 18 than he had it like year 12 or something like that. That kind of falls in line with like, and obviously Tom Brady has an immense amount of resources, right? But with somebody who had the awareness to change something in their
mm-hmm.
life, to extend their career, win a few more championships, right? Because I think he won 2 championships after that, and really solidify his place as the greatest to ever play the game, right?
Mm-hmm.
Whereas you got someone like Brett Favre, who his last couple of years of his career were laden in Vicodin, right? And
Yeah.
him gaining 20 pounds in the offseason every year and having to lose it during camp, right?
Yeah.
So
There's like a common theme there too with like entrepreneurship or creator economy or anything. It's like the willingness to go against the grain and try things that most people don't do and just being open-minded about it. And like those are two traits I see in yourself, in these other entrepreneurs, creators that I look up to. And you mentioned a point earlier, like Kobe and Michael Jordan, they might have been driven by some demon or some dark side. So like in your experience in your own life and like working with these bigger people like Dan Coe, Joey Justice, etc., do you think to reach those levels of quote unquote success, you have to be driven by some insecurity or fear?
I think it helps. I think it helps.
Mm,
And I think that's kind
mm,
of I think it's kind of like the untold. And I'm not going to postulate on what that might be for somebody like Dan, right?
yeah,
Like
yeah.
I'm not even going to guess. Him and I have never had those conversations. That's for you and him. But as I mentioned earlier, I recognized when I was young what I didn't want. Whether it was my own awareness, my own excuses that I gave myself, right? Kind of the things that I identified with when I was younger, or maybe just the world didn't have the opportunities available that it has now. The biggest thing that I respect about Dan Coe, and I just finished The Art of Focus, freaking amazing. Biggest thing I respect about him is that he's 27 years old. And for the last 5-ish years or however longer than that in reality, he's been actively moving towards a solution to the things that he didn't want. Right. So
Mm-hmm.
rather than him just sitting there and complaining about it and saying, I'm not going to go to college, college sucks. Right. There's a new world out there. I'm going to go work at the Outback Steakhouse and, try and do this drop shipping thing for 5 years. He was able to aggressively move through all of those stages of development, stay focused on the bigger picture, find solutions, right? Not make excuses for himself and take complete responsibility for the depth and the outcome of his life. Like if you've read The Art of Focus, in my opinion, there's no reason why a 27-year-old should be writing that book.
Yeah.
That's the reality, man. And
Yeah.
part of that is maybe my own insecurity because it took me 15 years and 40 ayahuasca ceremonies to come to some of those conclusions that Dan has in that book. Um, Dan, if you're watching this, man, I think that there's parts of that book that you're even going to go deeper on in your life, and I can't wait to see what that looks like. Like that's one of the things I told him the first time I met him. I can't wait to see where his mind and his thoughts take him as he goes deeper in his own adventure
Mm-hmm.
of life. Um, but what was the original question, man? I don't remember.
It was, do you think to reach a level of success, do you need to be driven by fear?
Yeah, I think there's a little bit. I think there's a part of it, man, and I think that's we kind of were talking about Talon before we jumped on. I think that's a little bit of like what he's got going on right now as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you got to be driven by fear. You got to be driven by some sort of like maybe fu attitude, chip on your shoulder, right?
Yeah.
Some sort of rebellion against the people in your life that have tried to make things heavy and hard, or tell you that something has to be a certain way. Or maybe you just like to ball out of control, right? I've got a friend that is a professional sports bettor, and he works nonstop. He works harder than you. He works harder than Dan. He works nonstop. This guy made like $4 million last year. And the whole reason why he does it is because I have to be more ignorant. I have to eat more steak dinners. I have to buy another Bugatti, right? Like literally, this is
Mm,
his attitude. I just have to be more ignorant because being ignorant is fun as hell
yeah.
when it's controlled, right? When you just have the money to just spend and it doesn't matter, right? And like, so you got a guy here who easily could have taken 40, 4 million, 10 million, whatever, gone and lived a great life, checked out of the game, considered a win, right? No, guy's spending 50 grand on games every single week, right? Because of
Mm-hmm.
he's probably addicted to it, right? But on the other side, it's like, do you know how ignorant we can be if we have this much more money, right?
Yeah.
And some people might look down on that. I don't look down on that at all. I think that's hilarious, and I think that's a great reason to want to be successful, right? Because at that point, what is this guy doing? He's memeing his own life. He is literally constructing his life in every way that he wants. He's got all his best friends with him. They're going to Miami, they're going to Vegas, they're doing this, they're traveling here, they're doing this, they're eating at Salt Bay's, restaurant, right? And they're just like sitting there, just like ordering tomahawks per person because it's funny and it's fun. A lot of people might say that, hey man, that's wasteful. And that's not what I'm in this game for. I'm in it for a higher purpose. You're fucking lying. Those people are lying. They're
Yeah.
lying. They're
That's
lying.
interesting. That's interesting because
Yeah.
I don't want that life. I would want ignorance for a steak dinner or like paying for rent. Like those would be good things to be
Yeah.
ignorant about. But to me, like that treadmill of hedonism, like
But
that
but
scares
but
me.
it,
But
but it's not
to
just
have the
hedonism. It's
opportunity to
hard
do
work.
it,
Yeah.
I'm sure
So
it's
like think
hard
about the
work.
dinner we had, right? Like how fun was that dinner that we had? Just the two of us, right?
That was
Like,
sick.
the wait staff was amazing, right? The drinks were cool, right? The accoutrements, right? From the free appetizers to the free dinner drink. It's like, are we taking that or are we taking Outback Steakhouse, right?
Yeah.
it's like there's just levels to like how you want to live. And so I think like, for the person that has to have the luxury purse, right? The person that just has to kind of fill that dopamine, that's a problem that's never going to get fixed, right? That's someone who is spiritually corrupt. My friend who does the
Mm-hmm.
sports betting, I don't think they're spiritually corrupt. I think what they're doing is just as spiritual as the person that's going to Burning Man or
Mm.
going and doing the ayahuasca ceremony, right? Because they're living with purpose, they're living with excitement, they're living with passion in their life, right? And
Mm-hmm.
and at the end of the day, it's kind of like you can check these guys out on Instagram. It's Las Vegas Kings. And at the end of the day, it's kind of just a thing where it's like, you know, I'm going to go get mine. I don't care what all these people at the bottom with their average thoughts and their average problems are going to do, right? They can all tell me that I'm a scammer or that, whatever it is that I'm doing is nonsense or that I'm ridiculous because I'm posting my tomahawk steak on my Instagram. But at the end of the day, this is somebody who has meticulously crafted his life, right? Has a wife, has a kid, right? Has all this stuff, isn't just, blowing coke and hookers, right? Type of thing. Um, and really enjoying their life, man. And how can you tell me that they're not? He's got a beautiful wife, he's got a kid, he's got a family, has great friends, is making more money than most people could ever dream of making in their entire life. Um, and that doesn't come to me as somebody with a chip on their shoulder, right? Doesn't come across, right? One of the nicest guys I know. And
Mm.
so I don't think you have to have it, man. I think somebody like Hormozy has a chip on their shoulder. I think somebody like Grant Cardone might have a little bit of chip on their shoulder. He talks about it. If you look at his history with his father dying, seeing what happened to his mother, struggling single mother. I think Hormozy, he talks about having his father, right? Uh, talk to him like he's a piece of shit. Won't say my past was much different. So I think it helps. Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And something else you said there, like being around those people who are doing these crazy things with that amount of money, being able to travel wherever, like eating tomahawk steak dinners every night, like just being around those people changes the way you see the world, at least for me, because it
Yeah.
shows you like what's possible. Like, because up until, I don't know, 6 months ago, I wasn't around anybody that like had money. Like that was just like absolutely didn't even think about money. And then
Yeah.
now, as I've started to meet more people at higher levels of the game, and even just the way they like pay for a dinner without thinking about it, or they just throw like 10,000, $100,000. They throw those words around like it's $10 or $20. It's kind of started to rewire my brain of how I think about these things, because like when you're a kid in college and like you're door dashing to just like get a little bit of
Yeah.
money, it's hard to like think about like flying around the country and going to steak dinners. But it's crazy that it's possible. It's like it's wild to me that people are really doing that.
Dude, one of the most beautiful times of my life, I was living on a futon on a patio in my friend's apartment in Las Vegas when I was like 26, no money, just trying to figure it out, right? Like one of these
Yeah.
things. It was like really like one of the most beautiful times of my life. And I look back on it, I'm just like, God, I wish I could go back to that level of simplicity, right?
Mm.
But it's like you just can't. Like as you start leveling up, it's like I'm never going to live on some random dude's futon because one, I don't need to, right? It's like I've got a house, I've got hundreds of thousands of dollars, not millions, but hundreds of thousands, right? Um, but yeah, man, it's again going back to kind of what you asked me at the beginning of this. Average thoughts lead to average problems. How can we step up the level of our problems? Because
Mm.
when you have bigger problems, you get the resourcefulness to fix those problems,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
It's like you're going to either rise to the occasion or you're going to crumble back down. I'm somebody I refuse to crumble, and I think most people should be that way also, right? It's
Mm.
like
Yeah. So one thing you said that's interesting is like when you were 26 living on the futon, like that level of simplicity was one of the best things in your life. But then that tweet that I brought up at the start of like I want giant fucking problems. That it's curious for me because is that the end vision? Like do you want to get back to that level of simplicity and ease with life, or do you
so.
want to like have more and more bigger problems throughout life?
So I don't see myself being somebody who's like the endless quest type of guy, right?
Mm-hmm.
I kind of got an exit number in my life to where it would be like chasing money would be I'd probably be good on, right? That number's 10 million, right? I'm not going to keep it a secret, right? It's like, if there was like when I start looking at things and I start thinking about like what else that I could do like in my life, like if I had 10, $20 million in the bank, I don't necessarily know that I'd be chasing e-com pursuits, right? Maybe my creator journey would actually be even more fulfilling, right? And maybe I would be able to expand on that in a way that I'm not even able to now because I have to focus on money. But I don't see myself being like a Hormozy type guy where I want to become a billionaire or I just have to keep the game going, right? And I think a lot of people, not to pick on him, but to use him as an example, is like, you got a guy who talks about how he doesn't want to have children because he couldn't relate to them if they wanted to be an artist or a musician, right? And so I think we just choose kind of how we want to live our life and what's important. Um, and so, no, I don't want to go back to that simplicity, but I would love to live in Costa Rica in like a group commune type thing, right? Even though I'm totally conservative, right? And a commune is like, kind of communist ideal, right? It's like there's a simplicity of that life, right? The fresh water, the organic meats, right? Like having the
Mm-hmm.
resources to go back and genuinely live in the way that so many people on the internet are thirsting for right now, right? People
Yeah.
want to be healthy, want to be away from plastics and polyester and all that stuff. So yeah, I would love a simpler life like that. But again, it's not simple at the end of the day. There's a lot of complexities, a lot of money, a lot of moving parts, a lot of like dynamics that need to be figured out to go live like that. It's not just cruising up to Vegas and chilling on my boy's couch, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah. I think about it very similarly. Like, I'm still very early in this stuff, but my ideal future, I don't think I'd necessarily want to be the dude that runs a big company. That could change. I'm open to that changing. But like by the time I'm maybe in my 30s and like I've built this creator business to whatever point, I don't know exactly. I might just choose to like focus on family and just writing books and like
yeah,
that's it rather than deal with like the mounting responsibilities of like 100-person company, let's scale it to 1 billion. I don't know. I don't think I would go that route, but we'll see. My mind has changed so much in the past that it could change again
yeah,
in the future.
yeah, dude. And mine might change in the future also, right? It's like, there might be something that happens next week where I'm like, okay,
Mm-hmm.
it's a 100K opportunity that could turn into a $10 million opportunity. And I might go all in, right? And I might get fat again, because I work 16 hours a day, right? Hopefully not, right? But um, yeah, man. And I think that's the beautiful thing about life, right? It's like, if I was at 25 in 2008 or whatever, being like, hey, this is it. The economy sucks. I'm fucked for life. I'm never going to be able to buy a house, yada, yada, yada. Um, Let me go accept my $50,000 a year job with dental insurance that my mom tells me I should be happy for because a lot of people are struggling out there.
Mm,
Like, cool, I
that's
could have
deep.
just accepted. Yeah, it's like, it's like suffering is relative, right? It's just like, it's like man search for meaning, right? It's like suffering is all relative. It's like, and it's
Mm-hmm.
like the person that's stuck in a cubicle might be as miserable as the person that's stuck in the concentration camp. If it's all truly as relative as they say it is, right? I don't
Mm.
think so, right? Obviously not, right? So, but yeah, I just I don't know. I don't know where we were.
Yeah,
Sorry.
I don't know either. No, it's all good. I did want to finish it up with one more
Yeah.
piece that I read on that 100 ideas on your blog, which like really caught my attention.
Mhm.
Um, and I have an idea of what you meant by it, but I'm curious to hear your thoughts in your own words. It
Yeah.
said, I think it was just a simple 3 words. It said only 75 summers. And like that hit me for whatever reason. So I'm curious, what does that mean to you?
So this is the biggest thing with me. So, I used to be quite the partier, right? Like in my younger days. That's actually calmed down quite a bit. But every year I go to Western Michigan and I go to a music festival called Electric Forest. Okay. My parents split time between Arizona and Western Michigan. So it's like a second home for me. Um, a lot of people will look down on music festivals as like maybe just a drug thing or just some sort of like party or something that's taking away from a life that actually allows you to build and have purpose. To me, they've been one of the most important and therapeutic things in my life that have allowed me to feel not only at home in this world but to feel at home with myself. So it's kind of like a mecca for me, this place, Electric Forest. And what I kind of mean by the only 75 summers is that you know your time here is limited, right? And it's not to tell you that, hey, you have to make time for debauchery, right? Or being a degenerate or something like that. That's not at all what it means. It's more just like, dude, your life is going to end. You are going to die someday, right? As you advance in life, there's eventually going to be a point where you have less energy than you have today. There's going to be a point when your brain doesn't work as well as it works today, right? It's true. It's facts, right? And those days are going to come a lot sooner than you think, right? And I think that most people, and this is again, dude, one of my biggest regrets of 20s when I was working every Saturday night at the bar or something and not enjoying my life, is that your life will end. Um, and you need to enjoy it, right? You need to get out there and you need to go backpacking in Europe, right? You need to see all the countries you can see. You need to say yes to the experiences. You need to approach the girl. You need to, say yes to the opportunity, right? You need to go, not bungee jump or something, but like, go do something that is like outside of your comfort zone, right? Um, and so I think when we put it like that, life is long, but when you really say 75, like 75 doesn't seem like a large number,
Mm.
right? And I'm at the point in my life where like, dude, the years are just flying by. They're flying by, right? Time compression is like a real thing as we age. Um, and so I think it's just important, man, to, you probably saw my article, The Endless Summer, right? As well, that I wrote.
Mm-hmm.
And so again, it just comes down to, right, the summer is a time for like release, for fun, so to speak, right? For enjoyment, right? Going to the beach, whatever, right? Um, how can we live in a world where like it's always summer, but we're still progressing our life,
Mm-hmm.
right? Where we're not living necessarily through the heavy and hard winters every single year, right? So it's kind of like a combination, just those two ideas. Like, dude, you're gonna die, dude. You're gonna really fucking die one day. Most
That's
people just
deep.
don't realize it.
No,
Dude, it's so basic, but it's like, dude, have you
right.
internalized it?
Yeah, and for
Internalized it.
whatever reason, when you reframe it from like 75 years to 75 summers, for me, it hit so much harder because like it's a shorter time period where like a year seems so long. It's like so much can happen in a year, but like you're only going to have this amount of summers and you've already had this many summers already. Each year you have one less. It's crazy to think about it that way. That
Yeah,
like hit me. Like I felt it in my entire body when I read that line. I was like, wow.
yeah, yeah. Good man. Hey, don't forget it. You know
I
what I mean?
won't.
It's
No, that's
like,
gonna stick in my
it's
head. That's
like,
like the one thing I might remember from this podcast. I might even title it that. I don't know. We'll see. But I
yeah,
think
I
that's a
love
good
it,
place
man.
to end it. We've been on for like an
Sure.
hour. That was a sweet conversation. I appreciate you coming on. But real
It
quick
was
before we
cool, man.
hop,
Sorry to anyone I rambled. I'm sorry.
no,
ADHD
it's
brain over
amazing.
here.
It's perfect for podcasting. Where can people find you at, and like what can they expect from you?
Yeah, guys. So again, my name is James Hansen. Right now, my website is www.james.systems. So james.systems, very simple. In there, you can find an email list, a couple articles I've written. Right now, my main project is working on Kortex University. So working on the education platform, the business development side. If you guys want to sign up for Kortex, want some information, hit me up. I'm guessing you'll link my socials here as well. But yeah, website James.systems, working with Cortex, and eventually we'll have some sales training, some sales products coming out. So for anyone that is confused as to how you sell somebody through the DMs, confused how you actually make an offer, how you make landing pages, email funnels, all that stuff, hit your boy up. I got some stuff coming. If you need me to help you out here in the next 30 days, I will do it for free because it also helps me develop my product. And I'm not going to have that offer after 30 days. So if you guys want to come DM me before then, I'll give you guys some help with sales.
That's a huge offer. And I could just
Yeah.
attest to everything he's saying. Like I'm working with James right now, a little bit behind the scenes on my stuff as well as with Cortex. And like this dude knows his stuff. So
Yeah.
anyways,
Thank you, brother.
yeah, thank you for coming on. And I'm super excited to see you build out this entire ecosystem.
Thank you, man. I'm excited for you too, man.
Thanks.
Later, buddy.